Welcome to Pimpy's Investment Chat, where we keep investment talk simple. And here's your host, Pimpy.
What is going on out there, peeps? All right, there's a lot of chatter about what happens if, Maliki becomes prime minister. And I've said on several occasions there was problems when Maliki was prime minister last time. And the last time when Maliki was prime minister, he changed the Iraqi Dinar exchange rate and blamed it on Dr. Shabibi. But there's more to it than that. Maliki was on a power grab. He wanted to be the person who replaces Saddam Hussein and run Iraq, is what he wanted to do. Before we get started, do me a favor and hit the thumbs up button. And if you're not a subscriber, please do so. And I certainly do appreciate it. If you're thinking about buying gold or silver or any other precious metals, give a consideration to our friends over at Money Metals Exchange. The link is down below in the description. If you're a first-time buyer and you spend more than $100, use promo code Pimpy, P-I-M-P-Y, and you will get a free half ounce of silver. So we're aware that Maliki is trying to become prime minister again, and also that the prime minister is actually the one that runs the country, not really the president. Maliki was prime minister before and is trying to become prime minister again. There are many reasons why it is that Sadr did not want Maliki involved in the government, him or any of his little buddies, because they were all corrupt, and according to Sadr, he wanted to investigate them for this corruption, reopen up the corruption files, and make them accountable for their actions. As I stated, Maliki wanted to replace Saddam Hussein as the big dog in Iraq, and still does. Let's review this quick article because it will make sense about what's going on with Iraq and the dinar today. It says foreign exchange. Saddam turns his back on greenbacks. So you can see right here, it says Europe's dream of promoting the euro as a competitor to the US dollar may get a boost from Saddam Hussein. Iraq says that from now on, it wants payments for its oil in euros, despite the fact that the battered European currency unit, which used to be worth quite a bit more than $1, has dropped to about 82 cents. Iraq says it will no longer accept the dollars for oil because it will not want to deal in the currency of its enemies. The switch to euros would cost the United Nations a small fortune in accounting paperwork changes. It would also reduce the interest, earnings, and reparation payments for Iraq to make for damages it caused during the first Gulf War. Obviously, technology today is a lot more advanced than back then. To make the accounting change shouldn't be more than just going into your computer and switching the currencies and having it done quickly. But the bigger thing to point out is this. You notice that they're saying this would be Europe's dream. That's because if Saddam was successful, it would have brought more demand on the euro, giving it a lot more value, and it would have caused the US dollar to lose a lot of value as well. The real reason why Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi were killed, because Gaddafi had proposed that they go away from the greenbacks and start using a gold-backed dinar. It cost him his life. But in the meantime, Saddam Hussein had made a proposal of moving over to the euros. Obviously, it didn't last long. The smart thing would be for Iraq to do the same thing that Putin had done over there in Russia, and that is demand for all oil purchases be done in the Iraqi dinar. It would seriously strengthen the Iraqi dinar value, and I think that's something that they should do. But this is what I was talking about. It says Iraq Prime Minister in power grab by ousting the bank chief. You can see here, this is the BTI report for Iraq. BTI report is used for many different things throughout the world. This particular company is well respected, and these reports are used to check credit worthiness of a country along with a million other things. But this report from 2018, you go down where it says currency and price stability. It's talking about the Iraqi dinar. Some interesting things jump out about this article that have been in question now for quite some time. It says the government's monetary policy since 2003 has focused on maintaining price stability and exchange rate predictability. The inflation has remained in the low since 2010. According to the CBI, the inflation rate was at 1.4%. That's 2015 estimates. while the World Bank estimated that in 2015 it was at a negative 1.2%. And the country's international reserve volume also has decreased due to the sharp decline in oil prices. Does that sound familiar? Where they used up a lot of the reserves. But now Iraq might possibly be setting a record for the amount of reserves being held, and it might reach about 90 billion at the end of this year. So that's a good thing for Iraq. Said the independence of the central bank suffered a setback in January of 2011 when former Prime Minister Maliki won a court ruling that placed independent institutions, including the Central Bank of Iraq, under the control of the cabinet. Now remember, the coordinated framework has friends that are on that Supreme Judicial Court. We've seen the same court interfere with Saudi trying to form the government over here in Iraq. It's the same people. They are friends of Maliki. They were back then and they are now. So as long as their Supreme Court is politicized, just like we have here in the United States, there's always that concern of major corruption and huge changes in Iraq. So what the Supreme Court did was take away the independence of the Central Bank of Iraq and allow the cabinet to take over, which means they allowed Maliki to control the Central Bank of Iraq. So what happened was in January 2012, the Central Bank of Iraq raised the exchange rate of the Iraqi dinar to $1.19, causing a huge crisis that led to the Supreme Judicial Council to issue an arrest warrant for the central bank governor, which was Dr. Shabibi, on October 2012 on charges of corruption. He was given a 7-year prison sentence, but he was acquitted on all charges later on. It said the difference between the official and parallel exchange increased from 3% in 2015 to 9% in 2016. The central bank introduced a number of policies to keep inflation low. The dinar remained widely stable and was worth $1.71 in early 2017. The thing that you don't see on here is what is the BTI making this comparison to? Is it the US dollar? Well, when I called the BTI company to get clarification, they said it's somewhere on the website. All reports are done against the US dollar. I know at one time me and InfoSeeker were kind of going over this, and he was saying that that wasn't the actual exchange rate, that he believed that the exchange rate was done in Iraqi dinar terms. In other words, it wasn't $1.19, it was actually 1,190 dinars for every one US dollar, and down here was 1,710 dinars for every dollar. If you look at the 2012 history of the exchange rate for the Iraqi dinar, it does seem to support what InfoSeeker is saying, because you do not see these exchange rates listed on there at all. So you can see here in 2012, there's no exchange rate happening. In 2017, there was no exchange rate that took place that shows that the values that they're talking about. Not at all. If anything, these rates support more of what InfoSeeker was saying. But once I got clarity that this is done in US dollars, it made me reflect again on what they meant by parallel rates. So is it possible that there are two rates being kept? One that it's available to the public today, and another one that lets us know the true value of the Iraqi dinar that is not yet available to the public? If you go over here to the Forex, which is the foreign exchange website, and try to look up the IQD, which is the Iraqi dinar, you can see right here it says, at this time, Forex.com does not offer trading in the Iraqi dinar. That means it's still under some types of restrictions. It's not being bought, sold, or traded on the Forex. So the big question is, once the Forex starts trading the Iraqi dinar, would this be approximately the actual rate of the dinar? There's so much speculation out there about this, it's not even funny. So let's just say, for the sake of it, that this is going to be close to what the actual rate of the dinar is going to be. I know everybody out there makes these different arguments about the reinstatement of the 322, but things have changed since then. Inflation, economies around the world, everything. So there could be a parallel rate that is kept. But that goes back down to the meaning of the deletion of the 3 zeros. What does that mean? because a couple years ago there was only about 54, 55 trillion dinars in circulation. According to the Central Bank of Iraq, now there's $114 trillion in circulation. It's more than doubled. So they can't do this rate. It would be really hard to do this. There's too much currency out there in circulation. But let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. If you look at the cryptocurrency Satama, you can see its maximum supply was 100 quadrillion. It's a meme coin. And if you look at the exchange rate against US dollar, you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 zeros in front of the one. That's its value against the US dollar. Satama made a move and changed. What it did was a deletion of the zeros. Yep, very similar to what we're talking about with Iraq. The new Satama V2 came out, and what had happened was if you held the old Satamas, they automatically made the switch for you to the new Satamas at a rate of 1 million to 1. I had like 35 billion Satama coins. After the exchange, somewhere around 35 million or something like that. So if their exchange was 1 million to 1, that means they removed at least 6 zeros, which means they'll have 100 billion in circulation. So they reduced the amount of coins in circulation, and what you could see happened. This was the former value. This is the current value. It went from having 9 zeros in front of a 1 to now having 2 zeros, 3. It's not very far from just being 1 cent, which is a huge difference in value. So with 100 quadrillion coins in circulation, you can see that there wasn't very much value to this particular cryptocurrency. Once they did the deletion of the zeros and reduced the amount of currency in circulation down to 100 billion, the value of the Satama was increased. So in order to get this particular exchange rate, they're going to have to decrease the amount of Iraqi dinars in circulation. That's why we hear so much talk about the deletion of the zeros. Although this report comes from 2018, the big question is this the actual rate of the Iraqi dinar compared to the US dollar? It appears that way. But in order for it to be this rate, you definitely are going to have to do something about the amount of currency that's in circulation. Now back to whether or not the Iraqi dinar rate exchange could be changed, because Maliki's done this before. The targeting of Iraq's well-respected central bank chief appears to be a move by the Prime Minister Maliki to consolidate power and sends a bad message to international investors, experts, and diplomats. So back here in 2012, if this news article came out here and said that Maliki consolidating power would send a bad message to the international investors and experts and diplomats, what do you think is going to happen again in 2022 if he somehow becomes prime minister? If there were concerns about him in 2012, they're going to be concerns about Iraq in 2022. It could set back Iraq with the international community. We might see sanctions placed on there again. Who knows? It really is going to depend on a lot of moves that Maliki makes as prime minister. It says right here, Shabibi was last week replaced by a governor of the central bank while he wasn't overseas. So the exchange rate took place while he was overseas. The replacement of him and arrest warrants went out for him of allegations of currency manipulation. What do we know Maliki was doing again this time? He was accusing the Central Bank of Iraq of doing what? Manipulating the currency again and accusing them of crimes. So it almost sounds again like Maliki's intentions are to change the exchange rate. I'm not saying he is, but it does appear that he's going to be doing the same thing all over again. Said the moves are the latest that appear to undermine the Central Bank of Iraq's independence after a Supreme Court ruling earlier this year put the bank under the supervision of Iraq's cabinet rather than the parliament. It is another step down the road to an extremely centralized level of control. Via proxy, Maliki has directed control of the Central Bank of Iraq, the Ministry of Defense, and the Ministry of Interior. These are the signature institutions of the Middle East state. It's not a complicated story. Shabibi, a 70-year-old economist who worked for 2 decades at the United Nations Trade and Investment Body and has been CBI governor since 2003, so by that time it was like 9 years, has been described by analysts and diplomats as a capable technocrat who fought to maintain the independence of the central bank. Iraq's cabinet, nonetheless, decided on Tuesday to replace him with Tariqi, the head of the Board of Supreme Audit, after a parliamentary report blamed Shabibi and other CBI officials for currency manipulation. According to Maliki's spokesperson, Ali Masawi, he's still there now, Masawi. So the article goes on to say, look, the international community did not believe this. They sided with Dr. Shabibi, but Dr. Shabibi had been in exile, I believe living in Europe for quite some time, because of these accusations. The article goes on to say that this was a power grab by Maliki, and that this was a move by Maliki to centralize all the power under his control as prime minister. Now remember, Maliki did not like this elections, and he complained that it was rigged, but you can see what he did back then. The decision to effectively sack Shabibi comes after Maliki sought to fire the former election commission's chief and push for reforms to commissions that were widely seen as likely to give the Dawa party greater clout control. You don't think he's going to do that again, especially after Sauder grabbed so many seats and the coordinating framework lost so many? It goes on to say that the Maliki government will claim the move against Shabibi, is part of a long-standing effort to root out corruption. It's kind of like what we have here in the United States. You got one political party accusing the other political party of what they are guilty of. So Maliki claiming that he wanted to clean up corruption, when in actuality he was the one that was corrupt. And this is exactly why it is that Sauder did not want Maliki and his cronies as part of the government. And this is exactly why Sauder wanted to open up the corruption files again and make some people accountable for their actions. It says right here, it looks more like a long-standing effort to gain control over the independent institutions. The problem is that even if certain allegations, in this case or others, such as VP Hassami, could contain an element of truth, there is no way of finding out because the judicial process in Iraq remains deeply flawed. It still is today. The Sunni vice president was accused of running death squad, charges he has dismissed as politically motivated last month. He was sentenced to death in absentia. Some Maliki's opponents, many of whom are members of the national unity government he heads, accuse him of consolidating power and displaying increasingly authoritarian behavior. So if he did that before, what's to keep him from doing that again? This is why I bring this up, and this is why I said it might take a while before the Iraqi dinar exchange rate changes and people lose their mind. You have to take all this in consideration. If Maliki did this before, what's to keep him from doing it again? He's making all the same accusations now that he did back then, that the Central Bank of Iraq is corrupt, that he did not like the elections and that the elections were rigged, and that he's now pushing to become the prime minister once again. All of this is a problem if you're an investor in the Iraqi dinar. I know you don't want to hear it, but on my channel, we don't just try to blow fluff up your butt. We're trying to stay grounded and think rationally about this particular investment. Anyways, you let me know what you think. Although it's possible Maliki may change the Iraqi dinar exchange rate, I'm not sure how realistic it is. And even if he did, would all of us have an opportunity and a place to make the exchange so that we could benefit from the rate change? It's hard to say. As much as I would love to see the Iraqi dinar exchange rate happen, I would not want to do that at the risk of hurting the Iraqi people in any way, shape, or form. If they could benefit from it, as well as us, then I'm all for it. But you can understand why it is that Maliki going into power could be trouble Sure, he might change the exchange rate, but can we benefit from it? That's a whole other story. But if we can't benefit from it and he doesn't change the exchange rate, then we have to deal with the behavior of Maliki and how that can set Iraq back several years. Anyways, that's it for now. You let me know what you think down in the comments. I look forward to hearing from you. That's it for now. I'm out.